Well, what?
That's as loud as you could crack it. It's just a noisy whack.
That's the sleepy sign.
Welcome to the Radical Parenting Podcast. My name is Tony Shawcross.
Hey, I'm Kara Porba.
I'm coming from my home because this is my first week having my son Arlo here in my home in Denver. So it's a special week for me, but we're taking a break from my parenting duties to talk about a class that Kara and I were in this last weekend called Helping Children Heal from Stress and Trauma. It's from the Aware Parenting Institute and was taught by Aletha Solter. I really enjoyed the class. What did you think, Kara?
Yeah, I loved it. She put some things in a certain, I felt like there wasn't necessarily any new information that I hadn't heard before, either from her or from Patty Whipfler in Hand Parenting, but there was some ways in which she made it so clear how we can help our kids, heal and be resilient. So yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. If I had to just say one kind of like takeaway summary of the whole class, I actually put this at the end of my notes. I think it would just be let your kids cry. I actually asked Aletha about this during the class. I took Arlo here to Denver, I mentioned, for my first time. So it was his first time on an airplane on his first birthday. And at the end, it was a little past his bedtime. And so he fell asleep on the flight. The flight went lovely. It was so great. I might insert some photos here. It was a great experience. But then he fell asleep at the end, and then I was unable to get out of the airplane without waking him. And so he really didn't like being rudely awoken. And then he had loved his first two airports because we had a layover in Atlanta. He loved his first two airports. He loved all the people. He loved just walking through the airports with me. But in Denver, he hated it. It was just overstimulating. He wanted to go to sleep. He was just crying. So I had to stop every few minutes and just be with him while he cried, carry him instead of riding him in the stroller. And when we finally got him in the car, he really responds well to singing. And so he's in the car seat. And so I just sang to him. And every time I'd start singing, he would stop crying. And every time I'd stop singing, he'd start crying again for about a 40-minute drive or 30-minute drive or so. And Aletha essentially just said, like, when he's crying, he's got something to say, and even soothing him with singing. And it's not like she said this strictly. It's not like a total, dogma or anything like that. But she said, even just singing and distracting him in that way is not ideal. It's probably better to just listen to him and just let him know that you're there and that you can.
There he is. Hey, Arlo.
That you can just be there for him while he's crying. So for me, that was the takeaway. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I feel like it's been, years that you and I have been doing radical honesty and years that I've been going down this, alternative path of parenting, and it still feels hard every time, to just be with and not necessarily fix, some pain or discomfort. Emotionally, obviously we meet. And so Aletha was very careful to say, like, you first meet all their needs, and in this particular case, if Arlo was tired and he wanted to sleep, I mean, that is a physical need, but if you're doing the best you can to, like, get home and get him in bed to where he can sleep. So, like, she just differentiated between when a child is crying because they actually need something and they're communicating, I'm I'm hurt here, or I'm hungry, or whatever, is different than the kind of crying that is a stress release and a offloading of that tension or trauma. And she's very careful to say that she does not recommend, what some people call crying it out, where the kid is isolated from you. Like a lot of people, like Tony, you mentioned Love and Logic, Parenting by Love and Logic to me the other day, which there's some really great stuff in that book. And one of the main things that, was almost stomach churning for me in that book is that they recommend that when your kid is like upset, that you isolate them in their room and tell them not to come out until they're smiling again or something like that, which like I literally almost feel sick when I think about that. So she's distinguishing between crying, unsupported crying, and what she calls crying in arms or supported crying, and I want to read this quote where she's talking about how crying, raging, all these kind of like what might seem like extreme responses. The thing we have to that I have to keep remembering is that it really is okay. It really is healing. It's not a bad thing. And I believe that in my mind, and it's still hard, in the moment. So here's what a quote of hers that I like. Healing consists of returning to the same level of arousal that occurred during the original trauma and processing the emotions while feeling safe and loved. So that's the difference. We're there with a calm and warm presence while they're going through this state of arousal. Of course, we're taught to believe that any state of arousal is bad, right? Like anything, any emotion, any physical arousal is don't go there. So that is the necessary piece. And that's what we do in Radical Honesty. And that's what we're talking about doing with our kids, that level of arousal is not something we need to be afraid of or make go away. It's the completion of a natural process that was blocked. This appears to convince the brain that the threat has been dealt with and overcome, to revisit that trauma or that emotion or that arousal while feeling safe and loved. A healed child is relaxed, alert, communicative, and nonviolent, and is no longer triggered by trauma reminders. Yeah, that's what I think it really all comes down to, is that there's healing there. We can't get over the stress or the trauma by trying to keep on an even low arousal place. We have to go into that place of arousal with a loving witness. And something about that reorders our systems so that threat is no longer a threat anymore.
And that's really what even just therapy is, you have to re-experience these interrupted, traumatic experiences or upsetting experiences. And the goal here is not interrupting them in the first place, I have a piano back there, and yesterday Arlo was playing the piano with me, and he kind of slipped and kind of hit his face on the piano, and it wasn't too bad, but it was bad. It scared me. And and so he was just really crying, and I had just gone through the training. I don't know if I would have done the same or not otherwise, but I was just there with him crying, and he just kept pointing at where he hit his face, pointing at his face. He's pointing at everything now, but pointing at the part of the piano where he hit his face, pointing back at his face, and just processing it in his brain while crying. And I wasn't bouncing him, wasn't oh, it's okay, distracting him from the experience, just letting him be in it. And and I don't know, I make up that he just processed it. And another quote from her is, kids can handle things if they have a witness supporting and loving them unconditionally.
Yeah, well done. I love that example, Tony, because with really young children, I think sometimes it's just as much the surprise of what happened. He may not, he needed to understand my face hit the piano, and there's the piano, and here's my face, and I fell down. And, they're really processing like what actually did happen.
Yeah.
It's not so much like I can't take this, I'm in so much pain, but it's like slowing down to be like, actually be like, this is what happened. Yeah.
At one point, I made myself really laugh because, again, I'll insert in post a picture of Aletha during the screen share. This was her first time doing a Zoom presentation. You could tell her slides have been around for a little while. But a lot of the things she said felt like kind of radical to me. This is the Radical Parenting podcast. Her program certainly isn't related to radical parenting. It's just called Aware Parenting Institute. But she's the least radical looking human on the planet.
Yeah, I was enjoying that as well. She's like the sweetest, kindness, elderly sort of grandmother looking woman. Yeah.
I really liked this slide that she showed. So when we stop a child's stress by bouncing and jiggling and rocking them, that can result in hyperactivity for the child. She's discouraging all of this. She's discouraging, it's so common. Your child's, especially babies, they're crying, you bounce them. But she says, bouncing, jiggling, rock them, you don't want to do that. It's an interruption of something that they need to experience and express. Feeding them for comfort rather than because they're hungry. If they're crying because they need a bottle, you want to feed them. If they're crying because they're upset, you don't want to shove food in their face. It can result in addiction to the breast, the bottle, food, sugar. She really discouraged pacifiers. We give Arlo a pacifier just for his sleep. And I was a little bummed to learn. Yeah, I think he's kind of hooked on it now. So I don't know but it can cause addiction to the pacifier. And then, like you said, even talking, singing, giving toys can just, result in chronically unhappy, whiny, demanding behavior. Here's what she does suggest: just to listen to your kid crying and say, I hear you, I'm listening. It's okay to cry. These are just examples, not things you need to recite, but I see how upset you are. Do you want a hug? I'm right here. You're safe with me. I will stay with you until you feel better. I won't leave you alone with those big feelings. You can cry as long as you want. You don't have to explain anything. I love you no matter how sad or mad you are. I really liked that summary of what we can say and do when we just don't know what to say and do, because none of us want our kids to be crying.
Yeah.
Let's look at one more slide that she had.
And I want to say something about that, Tony. Mm-hmm. It was really important for me to hear her say, and I've heard this many times from various people, but I need to hear it over and over again. We can't prevent our children from experiencing stress and trauma. I mean, we can do our best to have like a healthy and predictable life, and it just is impossible to avoid every single stress or trauma. As much as we try to protect them, it could be anything from like this, social difficulties with older children, or like the simplest medical thing, like getting routine vaccinations, a grandparent dies. Like there's so many things that are just, it's part of life. Like our kids have lots and lots and lots of stresses and trauma, including from our own behavior. I put such importance on parenting, and then it almost makes it worse if I raise my voice or do something in the not ideal way. I feel so guilty about it. And I feel more hopeful thinking like my child can heal from anything, including my own behavior. Mm-hmm. And I can help her with that. If I lose my shit and she gets scared, I can then actually really connect with her and help her get over that, even when it's coming from me. Her stress is coming from me.
Totally. And Aletha was so careful. Like when I was asking her questions about singing to him in the car, or giving him a pacifier, or any of those sorts of things, you could tell she wants to give you the information, but she really doesn't want parents to beat themselves up, about this stuff. And there's a lot of talk about how, it's never too late and, that it's okay to make mistakes. I kind of just wanted to like, stop taking care of me. Just give me the information. Just tell me what's right and what's wrong. But yeah, what you just said, I only wrote 3 kind of like summaries, like 6 hours of this course narrowed down into 3 sentences. I already said, let your kids cry is first. That idea that kids can handle things if they have a witness supporting and loving them unconditionally. And then the 3rd sentence was what you just said. It's not my job to keep my kids happy. It's not my job to protect them from stress. Yeah, I really liked that message.
Yeah.
So the class kind of started with just reminding us and introducing the idea that kids can experience stress and trauma in utero, and not just, after birth. It says that the stress response for kids, like for most of us, it can be hyperarousal or it can be disassociation. So hyperarousal is like the fight flight response. Disassociation is like the freeze response. Some people ask about the fawn response, which most of us are used to hearing now: flight, fight, freeze, fawn. I imagine that kind of goes in a little bit with dissociation.
And I think that would line up with going back to the yes brain that we did a few episodes ago, with like the red zone being the fight or flight and the blue zone being the sort of shut down, withdrawal, disassociating one.
Yeah, if you guys haven't watched that one on the Yes Brain, of all the books we've read, and we've read about 20 now, I'd say that might be my favorite. So we'll put a link to that down in the bottom. But so that stress response, when it becomes chronic, results in hyperactivity, distractibility, impulsivity, aggression, violence, sleep disturbances, exaggerated startle response, and overactive kind of fear and threat response. So that's what happens when your kids are like kind of chronically hyperarousal. That's a little more common in boys and in older kids. With girls, it's a little more common to do the disassociation, the blue zone. So that leads to withdrawal, isolation, passivity, and self-harm, hair pulling, self-cutting, those sorts of things. So these are all things that can result when we are just kind of chronically not letting our kids experience the stress and process it and work through it.
That's really the crux of radical honesty as well, and Gestalt therapy, right? Is that like when there's something incomplete or there's something withheld or not finished in our stress response, that we're not as much ourselves. When we actually are able to fully experience whatever it was that got stopped or blocked, then we have so much more freedom and joy and ability to also be fully sad too. So it's very much radical honesty in a nutshell, that like our kids are also going to be happy and free and more joyful and more sad and more everything and more alive when they're able to offload their stress and get that tension release.
I'm sorry if I'm distracting you from talking. I had a little bit of help with Arlo, but he's not too used to being with other people than me, so he wasn't too happy with it. Oh, so we might have to stop. Oh, he knows I'm not paying attention. This isn't just a setup for the podcast. This is real life. Huh, buddy? Huh, buddy? Oh, yeah. What do you need? What do you need? I think he just needs some attention. He needs to not be ignored from his daddy.
Yeah.
He loves typing on the keyboard. So just hearing him cry just now kind of reminds me of the exercise that she did during the class, where she had us listen to a baby crying and feel in our bodies what that brought up for us. Can I have a kiss, please? Can I have a kiss? Can I have a kiss? And yeah, I mean, it's just in our nature. It's we want to resolve it when a baby is crying. Oh, buddy, he wants to play on this keyboard. So for those of you that are just listening, my son just joined us. He's on the video, but not on the audio because he can't talk yet. But we're taught at a young age that we're not allowed to cry, and so she gave she gave a couple examples why we have so much trouble being with babies crying. One is that genetic thing that we just want to provide for them. We want to help them. Another is that we're taught not to cry. And then a third one that she didn't really mention is that it brings up unresolved stuff for us. It brings up things that crying that we've had interrupted that we don't know what to do with.
Yeah. And one of her exercises was to go back and remember times where we cried when we were a child and how our parents responded and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a terrible memory. I didn't have trauma in my childhood. I had, really kind, caring, attentive parents, and I just have almost no memories from, probably all the way up till high school. But if I were to guess, some of these guesses are based on how my parents, behave with my daughter. I would guess that I was never told not to cry or punished or shamed or any of that. But I'm guessing that my parents were probably more on the side of like distractions or fix it somehow, or, would make it go away, basically. So we can, even in super well-intentioned ways, trying to be responsive parents, there's a little flavor of like, I wish you would stop and I'm not comfortable with what you're expressing. And it's so hard, my gosh, because, like, for example, right now, Arlo, was maybe wanting attention or wanting to play or who knows what. He can't tell us exactly. But like, I was going like this on the screen. It's like, that might have been is that a distraction? Or is that actually filling a need for him of like, he wants to interact, he wants to have eye contact, he wants to play. So I think it's tricky sometimes, to distinguish like what, especially with babies who aren't talking yet, what is actually filling a need, what's filling their need, and what is filling our own need to like somehow get out of our own discomfort around listening to their discomfort or pain or dissatisfaction.
Yeah, and rather than look for like a clear-cut answer to that question, I think it's best to just be in that inquiry kind of constantly, just like keep asking that question. Because like even Aletha said, like there's nothing wrong with singing to your kid. There's nothing wrong with like giving them the attention that they're asking for. But I want to make sure, just in everything I'm doing with Arlo, I want to make sure that I'm meeting his needs, that I'm following his lead, that trusting that he knows best what he needs, not I know best what he needs. I think for every time that I know better than he knows what he needs, there's 9 that he knows best what he needs. Yeah. And to me, that's one of the kind of core ideas behind radical parenting is this idea that our children are the product of billions of years of evolution and are just like, it's just a miracle. And it's not perfect. There are some gaps we need to be filling, and we do need to be providing some leadership, but not as much as most parents think, I think.
I was interested in what she said to you about singing in the car. Yeah, and she kind of said, it's not bad and it's maybe not necessary. And I was thinking, I know more of the details of the situation than what her did. And I'm like, right now I'm thinking, that may have been something he really needed after so much newness all day, airports, being in a plane, being 10,000 miles up in the sky, or all of that newness, being in a new car, being in a new car
with new people,
being in a new everything, new, everything. Your voice is something that he knows, that's familiar.
Singing the exact same songs he's been hearing since he was 1 day old. Yeah.
And you're in the car, you can't hold him.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's probably something where, that probably was something that he was comforting for him, not in a stifling way, but in a like, I'm having a hard time here, and here's like one thing that I can latch onto. Like, I know my daughter goes to her dad's house for 2 days every week. We only live 30 minutes away from each other, but I almost have to learn this over again every time. Every time she comes back, almost, she needs to fall apart and have some kind of meltdown. We don't know what's going on for them. We don't know what their stresses are. We just don't really know. I don't know what she was doing at her dad's house for 2 days. I don't know what she's been doing at school for 6 hours today. I don't know what, happened with a friend or another child, or, we just don't really know what's going on for them. And they're not going to be able to describe it in a logical way for a few more years. So I really like that statement from Aletha's list there of, you don't need to explain anything. And I almost want to just remember that for myself. Talking about it in a very simple way in order to just like process and revisit is one thing, but like trying to analyze and do a bunch of like that kind of talking about it isn't the most helpful. Like, it's actually about having the experience and having the physical arousal and going through that. And we should talk about play before we
run out of time. Yeah.
We have about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. Well, Aletha gave a few examples, like you said, where she did know what her child had gone through. And so she kind of responded differently to what her child was dealing with, because she understood all of that. And there's another book that I did, an episode that I did with Laura Turley, I think that you weren't part of, where we read The Explosive Child. And they gave more of those examples, like, here's all this stuff leading up to like this kid freaking out about her Eggo waffle or whatever. And like you were just talking about Elsie Jane, most of the time we aren't going to know that. We aren't going to know what they're rebuilding up, like what's coming up for them. The broken cookie example or whatever that she gave, like, we aren't going to know and this is an example where her daughter maybe flipped out about a broken cookie because none of the cookies that she was feeding her were whole or something like that. And all we know as parents sometimes is, my kid is totally flipping out over this broken cookie. And we're often not going to be able to put the pieces together about, oh, this is actually about these things that have happened and led up, where she didn't feel safe, like letting all this out. And now today, in this moment, this is where all this stuff that's been built, all this tension that's been building up is going to get flushed out. And we just have to trust them that they need to do it. Like, instead of just saying, oh, this is just your broken cookie, it's no big deal, shut up, or something.
Yeah.
Like, we just need to trust that there's some good reason why they're flipping out in this moment. And they just need you to be there and hear them and let them know it's safe for them to experience what they're experiencing.
Yeah. Trusting that there is a really good reason.
Yeah.
And that it's a like golden opportunity that they feel safe in that moment to release it. And that's like, it's like, great, bring it on, like, we can welcome that, knowing that it's really healing and that they're gonna feel so much better afterwards.
Yeah. So let's talk real quick about play.
Well, I have one example that I'm kind of proud of, actually. So all this talk about the nervous system, that's essentially what we're talking about, is like stress, this, our autonomic and the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems and what's going on there. And I'm trying to track my own more, so that I know when I'm building up tension, so that I can take care of it when my daughter's not around. So anyway, one of the times where I do sometimes lose it is teeth brushing time. It's like, it's bedtime, we're both tired. Teeth brushing is, sometimes I just let go of it. But it's not one of those things where I'm not willing to say, like, we'll just brush teeth whenever we feel like it. That's the thing. We brush teeth every night. And over and over and over again, we've had battles over teeth brushing, and I've tried so many different things. And like, we have a few little games that work and things that we do, but still it often takes, 5 or 10 minutes of either playing or arguing or whatever until we can actually brush teeth for like and it takes 1 or 2 minutes, right? And I'm saying all these like we could have been done by now if we had started originally. And I'm saying all this stuff that like doesn't work with kids. Sometimes I'll just be like, okay, I'm going to walk away and do something else. Come get me when you're ready. I've just tried everything, right? So the other night I was like, it came to me, here's another way to play with this and to play with, I believe the reason she has so much resistance to brushing teeth is because I've had such a hard time with it. And she knows that it's kind of a button for me. I'm like ready for her to get in bed and be done with my parenting day, right? And like go take a bath or watch Netflix or whatever I'm going to do. And I'm like really feeling tense about it. So she knows that I'm having some tension about it. I don't even think it's about her, it's about me. So I thought, how can we play around with that? And so I started asking her, okay, I would say, instead of saying, okay, now it's time to brush teeth, I'll say, now it's time to argue about brushing teeth. And she would laugh at me and look at me funny. And then we would kind of argue. And the first few times she'd say, no, we don't have to argue. And then I would make a big fuss about like, oh, but we always argue. And we need to like argue about it first before we brush teeth. And she'll laugh and, think it's funny. And then she'll say, did you really miss arguing, Mama? I'll say, yeah, we used to do that every night. And then finally one night she was like, okay, we'll argue. And so I was making fun of myself by like pretending to get upset and like stomping out of the room and saying like, oh, I'm going to go and I need a break. I'm going in the other room. And, I'm listening to make sure that she's laughing and that she's like thinking it's actually a game. And it worked awesome. I was like, after 3 years of trying everything, I could just be like, okay, let's argue about brushing teeth. And then it's just kind of evaporates, her resistance.
Yeah, when you told the story about like the germs that are whatever that are hiding in her teeth or whatever.
Bugs.
Yesterday there was a little girl over here visiting with Arlo that didn't want to put her socks on, and so I used that same thing. Like her sock was like a monster that wanted to eat her foot, and then she held her hand to like stop it. I was like, okay, it's going to eat your hand instead or whatever. Playing these games. And Karen, I didn't mention, but Aletha said that crying is one of the main ways that kids process their experience and process and resolve things in their brain and body. And this play and laughter is the other. So that's why about half of the workshop is really focused on play and laughter.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Tony, because we're like, this is one place where she recommends that parents actually do take the lead in a way in terms of sort of designing a game that helps the child to revisit the tension, whatever it is. So it's kind of fun. Sometimes I feel like I don't want to play any games. Like I'm tired. I can't think of like something fun right now. I'm in the least fun mood ever, right? But then even if it's like, I feel like arguing with her about teeth brushing, it's like, well, that's the game. And, if there's any exaggeration or silliness, it's a way of revisiting something that has, I wouldn't say been traumatic for her, but been probably stressful for her. It's probably stressful anytime your parent gets upset or tense. And so it's a way to revisit it in a safe way when we're playing and laughing and doing especially physical play or jokey, silly stuff. Then it's safe, but we're still, it's therapeutic in that way. So she gave all kinds of examples of like, you can use toys or dolls or whatever to like literally replay a situation that was upsetting to a child, which is really pretty radical, right? I mean, we often think, oh, don't make them talk about it, or, don't do anything that's going to upset somebody. If somebody's had a loved one die or had a traumatic something, oh, like, don't make them talk about it, don't upset them. And this is the exact opposite. It's like revisiting what happened, playing out different scenarios about, she was talking about something with her son where something had happened on the beach and they played it, she said, for 3 days, all different scenarios of this happened or that happened, redoing the scenario. And they get to really process it that way. When we avoid it, they never really get to process it and get over it.
Yeah. And often your child will just initiate that play in the way that they need to. But like Kara said, there were some examples. So I'm going to do another screen share and show some of her handout. So this is her handout on attachment play to strengthen attachment and help children heal from trauma. So this non-directive child-centered play is just, letting the child like free play while you're paying attention. The therapeutic value is it helps them feel valued, makes use of adult attention to bring up and work through any traumatic experiences they might have. Another is symbolic play. So that's when, if your daughter had trauma from getting a shot or something, you can play this doctor play and play it in both directions or whatever helps them process specific traumatic events. Contingency play. So you're doing whatever the kid says. This is different from power reversal games. Helps children develop trust and a sense of powerfulness. Laughter releases anxiety. I don't totally understand the difference in contingency and power reversal, which is coming in a little bit, but nonsense play.
I was just wondering that. I know. One of the things is the imitation. Like if you do something where like you're literally just, or let's say I do dance parties with my daughter and she tells me like what moves to do or when to catch her or whatever, so I'm not necessarily in a less powerful position, but she is like
orchestrating,
telling me what to do and orchestrating it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thanks. Then there's nonsense play, which you said like helps release just kind of kids are always having to like fit into and learn how to follow the rules of society. And so nonsense play can help them let go of all that and just be silly.
Yeah, it brings some silliness around like doing it wrong on purpose. Because so often it's like, you've got the wrong shoe on the wrong foot, or like, those are the wrong pajamas, or whatever it is, right? It's like, they're so often getting corrected. And then it's healing to just do it wrong on purpose and have all this laughter and silliness about it.
Yeah. I love this next category of separation games, peekaboo, hide and seek. She encouraged this with kids that have separation anxiety that don't want to get dropped off at school or handed off to their other parent or caretaker during the day. Then power reversal games.
About that for me and you especially, Tony, and anybody who is co-parenting with a separated parent. It's like I'm thinking, every time she comes home from dad's house, we can play hide and seek, or before she goes to dad's house. There's Arlo again.
We might have to stop, but you guys can.
Okay.
I'm still screen sharing, right? So you guys can see those other games. Do you want to talk through any of those?
I'll talk about them. Yeah.
I'll mute myself.
So the power reversal games, and this I first heard of through hand-in-hand parenting. So of course, if anyone listened to the hand-in-hand parenting podcast, which was 1 or 2 episodes ago, actually we did Patty Whippler's book called Listen. All this play stuff is very similar to hand-in-hand parenting. So power reversal games, I really am so glad I learned about this because, we often as parents think that we need to sort of maintain our authority somehow. And this is the exact opposite where like, I was never sure, should I let my child win on purpose? Or is that sort of like lying and faking it and giving her some false sense of like that she's going to win all the time? And I realized that, if I was in a world where almost everyone around me was like 20 feet tall and knew how to do all the things that I didn't know how to do and was stronger than me, that I might like to win sometimes or be the strong one sometimes. And so I like this one, power reversal games. The adult pretends to be weak, frightened, clumsy, or stupid. She's pushing me over and I fall down or whatever. And the kid knows that it's silly. They know they can't actually push you over. So it's play, it's a game. And they get to release some of their frustration and powerlessness and be the powerful one.
Good.
Next one, regression games. Oh yeah, my daughter does this one every once in a while. Child pretends to be a baby and the adult joins in and so often I see adults like kind of shaming kids when they act like a baby. And, it's not always pleasant to if the kid is, crying or whining or something. But yeah, my daughter's 5 and she will, every once in a while, she will just curl up in my lap in like almost a nursing position and kind of like even lay her head on my breast and say, I'm the baby. It's like pretty obvious, And so I feel having learned about some of this, I feel very confident now that that's healthy and healing for her in some way. I have no idea where it's coming from, but she kind of just will start it on her own. Next one, activities with body contact. Aletha was saying for kids who've been through more serious trauma and abuse that full on body contact might be too much. And then it might just be like a hand clapping game, that kind of contact. But the kid is getting that safety and connection through physical touch. And then the last one, cooperative games and activities. I'm not so familiar with that one, and my child's not so interested in that. It's very rare that we do a puzzle together or, build something together. Every once in a while, I guess. Yeah.
And again, the kind of summary is just that play and crying are the 2 ways that kids work through their stress, and that kids will often kind of just initiate the play that they need, but occasionally we need to initiate it, and that's one of the ways to do it. Check out this little boy.
Yeah.
Check out this little boy.
Hey, Arlo.
He just finished his bottle.
Some milk.
So thank you guys for joining us for a special episode. Again, we'll put links to Aletha, Solter, and
Fair Parenting Institute.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably, you want some more bottle? This is empty. I'll fill it up though in just a second. I think we'll probably do one of her books. Have you read any of her books?
I haven't. I just ordered a couple of them. Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, I think the first one especially, they're all for kind of different age ranges, and the one that's for this guy's age range, I'd be excited to
Cool.
to read.
The aware baby, I think.
He's going to start pushing all the buttons, and he's going to ruin our Zoom call, so it'll be the perfect outro. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week. We're going to do an episode on another book, the Bowen Theory, right? 8 Concepts of the Bowen Theory. Yeah.
Yes.
Really good one. And he'll be back in his other home, back in his mommy's home. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for listening to the Radical Parenting Podcast, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.